Hello and welcome to part 3 in my series of how to own your trauma, how to process your trauma, how to honor it and heal and move forward with your life. And don't mind me, I am taking this opportunity to sun myself. It is definitely a lazy day, a well-earned lazy day for me. But I wanted to talk about the mental aspects of trauma. And I actually, funnily enough, I just recorded a podcast specifically on reversing my mental illness. And I go into a lot of really great stuff there. So either on the website, the Radical Sovereignty website, you can find the podcast listed there, or you can go to Apple Podcasts because it is officially there as well. So the Radical Sovereignty podcast on Apple Podcasts, you will find an episode on this topic specifically. But I think the one thing that I didn't really touch on too much in the podcast, if at all, I can't really remember at this point, but it's about when we have traumatic events, we tend to take them very personally, right? And rightfully so. It is a huge personal attack in a lot of ways. But while we were a victim at one point, when our mindset around a traumatic event is specifically one of a victim mentality, we tend to get stuck in this really negative loop. We tend to get stuck in the story mentally, and the story can really start to wreak havoc on our lives because when we're hung up on the negative aspects of something and the victimization, the self-victimization around an event, we tend to, because our thoughts create our reality, especially the repetitive ones, because our thoughts create our reality, we tend to subconsciously create more chaos, more havoc, more situations in our life that tend to play into that really yucky story that none of us want to continue to have an attachment to, but just haven't been given the tools on how not to feel that way and how not to be in those loops. So if you want a better quality of life, and if you don't want to be ruled by the mental aspects of a trauma, especially if you have mental illness, one of the greatest things that I have found to be effective is the concept of objectivity about the whole thing, and kind of removing myself from being the only victim, right? Removing the self-victimization role that I have in it and realizing that there is so much more to every single thing that's happened to me than just me and my personal experience. And I think this is kind of a hard concept for a lot of people because it sounds like victim blaming, maybe, or it could sound like absolving somebody of a really horrible thing that they've done. And that's not at all the point of this. This is about disempowering the scenario in our bodies and minds. And it really is about taking back our own personal power through the understanding that not everything about that circumstance was because of us. And half the time it has, actually the majority of the time, if not all of the time, depending on how you want to look at it, it really has absolutely nothing to do with us. We just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And we unfortunately had other circumstances in our life that put us right on the track of experiencing some kind of hardship like that. So So yeah, what I mean by being objective is by looking at the big picture and stop thinking of just yourself as the victim, because whoever the perpetrator is, if there is a person involved, they're also a really hurt person. They're a disturbed person. They have their own severe traumas. And again, we are not absolving them and saying that, oh, well, we're not making excuses, right? We're not making excuses for them, but we are looking at the reality of the situation and understanding that they are a product of their own conditioning. They're a product of their own fucked up existence. Because really, nobody is born evil. Nobody is born into a life, planning on being a terrible person. But it's situational, it's circumstantial, it's what they were born into and how they were able to handle it and what kind of tools they were given or not given is how people turn into maybe not so great people. And it's been really powerful for me to consider the inner child of the people that have hurt me and think about how fucking horrifically sad that inner child must be, and the higher self of that being. How disappointed they must be in how things have played out for whoever the person is. And just remembering, and this is a hard one too, this is another hard concept for people to grasp, is that we are all capable of becoming a monster. We're all capable of being terrible and mean and cruel and creating injustice. We all have that in us. And the more we can accept that and accept the fact that, while yes, everybody does get a choice in how they handle their traumas, everybody gets a choice in how they let it affect their lives and how it impacts the people around them. Not everybody is as fortunate as, and nor are they as strong and resilient as the rest of us who have also gone through terrible things but have become better people for it, And it's being able to see that there is so much that we don't know, that we don't understand, that we can't even begin to fathom. That's a part of what happened to us. And the more objective we are, and the more we step away from the self-victimization and the cycle that our brain goes through, and the way that it perpetuates more victimhood in our lives, the more we step away from that mentality and step into this one of radical compassion, radical acceptance, radical honesty, the easier it is for us to put down the anger. And I'm not saying don't be angry. I'm not saying don't fight for yourself. I'm not saying don't avoid seeking justice for yourself. Like, if things need to be corrected based off of what has happened to you, then it needs to be corrected. And you deserve to experience all of the feelings that you have around what's happened to you as many times as you need to experience those feelings. But stop being a victim about it. Like, you're not a victim anymore. And the more angry and upset and pissed off and victim-y you make yourself, the more you're just going to keep being that. And it doesn't help you. Because I get that fear. I get that fear that if I'm not angry about this, then that feels like the person got away with it, right? If I'm not angry, then that feels like they just get to walk away unscathed. But the truth of the matter is that it doesn't matter how fucking angry you are at them, because your thoughts don't really impact them at all. Like, the relationship that you have with it doesn't have an effect on their life. Really, truly, not much at all. And the more angry you are, the more you are feeding the energy of pain and suffering between you and that person. And so you're just going to continue suffering. You're going to continue putting yourself back into the situation that you don't actually want. And by letting go of that anger, you know, like, that's liberation. That's liberation at that point. And that's what I want for you. And that's what you should want for yourself. And so, and that's a tough one. You know, everything that I've talked about, I get it's not easy, because there's a lot of mental gymnastics that you kind of have to get through in order to be open to making those steps. But I will tell you, it is incredibly freeing to stop making everything so much about me and just my experience, and having compassion for the whole rather than just the self. So this might be kind of a triggery one, and it might make some people mad, and I hope that whoever those people are, that, you know, they can reflect on why it makes them mad. Please, I do implore you, please go listen to the podcast on how I reversed my mental health, because again, I go into more practical ways of getting your mind right, and you know, how to actually heal your brain through practical ways. So I hope this was informative as always, and maybe next time we'll touch on our spiritual selves, right? Yeah, because we've done physical, now mental. I think it's time to look at the spiritual aspects of healing trauma. All right, until then.